This is a video tutorial for the Happy Days thread catcher with pincushion, and this is what you'll need. You'll need some fabric for the outer, fabric for the lining, fabric for the inner of the pincushion, fusible interfacing and some crushed walnut shells. And this is how you make it. Place the two main outers of your thread catcher right sides together and line up the sides and the edges. As you can see, I've already put fusible interfacing on. Clip along each side and along at the bottom. I've clipped it and now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Start there and sew all the way down to the bottom and stop. All the way across the bottom and stop, and back up and stop. I will not be sewing in these box corners. I've sewn along both side edges and along the bottom, and now I'm going to do the box corners. To do the box corners, place your hands, your fingers inside, open up and line up the bottom seam and the side seam together, and then put a couple of clips in. And repeat it for the other side. I've clipped both sides and now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Sew along that side and along that side to form the box corners. I've sewn along both sides, forming the box corners, and now I'm going to turn it the right way. Push the corners out. And we'll put that to one side while we work on the lining. Place your two lining fabrics for your thread catcher right sides together. Line up the edges along the bottom and then clip along there and along there, remembering to leave a gap at the side for turning later. I've clipped it and now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, start there and sew all the way down to the bottom and stop. Along the bottom and stop, and then up this side but stop there and leave a gap, and then start again and stop. Again, we'll not be sewing either of the box corners quite yet. I've sewn along that side, across the bottom, and I've sewn up the side and I've remembered to leave a gap at the side, and now we're going to box the corners as we did for the outer. So pop your fingers inside and line up the bottom seam and the side seam, and then put a couple of clips in. Oops. I've clipped both box corners and now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all the way down there on that side and again along that side, forming the box corners. I've sewn along both sides, forming the box corners, and now I'm going to leave the lining the wrong way round as it is now and work on the strap. Now we're making the strap. Fold your strap fabric in half, right sides together, and press, and then clip along each of the long sides. I've clipped both of the long sides and I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Start at the top of the fold and sew all the way down to the bottom and stop, and again from the top of the fold all the way down to the bottom and stop. I've sewn along each of the long sides, and now I'm going to turn it the right way. I've turned it the right way, and now I'm going to fold it in half and just finger press it just to form a crease so I can find the centre. Now take the outer of your thread catcher that you made earlier, and we've got to find the centre of the back, and to do this line up both side seams and pinch it together, and then you can either put a pin there or you can mark it with a pen. Now take your strap which you folded to form a crease and put this crease on the pin that you've just put, and then clip it across. Once you've clipped it into place, take it over to your machine and sew quite close to the edge and tack into place. Once you've tacked your strap into place, we've got to place the outer, which is turned the right way, inside the lining, which is still turned the wrong way, so the fabrics are right sides together. I've lined up the side seams and the top edges, and I've ensured that the strap is tucked away inside, and I've clipped all the way around. And now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all the way around the top, joining everything together. I've sewn all the way around, and now I'm going to turn it the right way through the gap I left on the side. I've turned it the right way around, and as you can see, I've left a little bit of the lining showing, and I've also pressed and top stitched for a nicer finish. Now we're working on the pincushion inner lining. Place your 2 pieces of fabric you've cut out and place them right sides together. Line up again the sides and edges, and then clip all along there, along there and along there, and remember to be leaving a gap at the top. I've clipped all the way around, and now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine, and I'm going to start there and stop, along the one side and stop, across the bottom and stop, back up the other side and stop, and then just a little bit at the top and stop, and remembering to leave a gap at the top. I've sewn all the way around, and I've remembered to leave a gap at the top, and now I'm going to turn it the right way by pulling through the gap I've left. I've turned it and I've pressed it, and I've also tucked in the raw edges at the top, and now I'm going to fill it with crushed walnut shells. Put your funnel in the gap that you left and then fill with walnut shells. Now we're working on the outer of the pincushion. Place your 2 fabrics right sides together, and again line up the edges and the sides and pop some clips along. I've clipped it all the way around, and now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start at the very top and stop, along the one side and stop, across the bottom and stop, the other side and stop, and then just a few stitches along there again at the top, remembering to leave a gap at the top. I've sewn all the way around, remembering to leave a gap at the top, and I've snipped the corners, and now I'm going to turn it the right way through the gap I left. I've turned it the right way, and I've pressed it, and I've turned in the raw edges here, The next stage is to put your inner bag that's got your crushed walnut shells in inside the outer of the pincushion. I've put the inner bag inside the main outer of the pincushion, and now taking your strap that you made earlier, place it inside, make sure it's in the centre, and when you're happy with where it is, you can always check with a ruler if you across there, and then pop some pins in. Once you've pinned the strap into the pincushion, take it over the sewing machine and sew across, and this will also seal up the gap that you left. Sewn across, sealing up the gap we left and attaching the strap to the pincushion, and that's your thread catcher with pincushion all finished. Here's your thread catcher in place.